the number one problem they have is they're not on time. Over and over and over again, chronically not on time. And if you're a hairstylist, if you could stay on time, you're going to have a lot more success in this industry. And the problem is so many aren't. They're very reactive to other people's whims, and they don't take that seriously.
Welcome to the Hairpreneur Show, the show that teaches you, the hair pro, how to work smarter so you can make more, work less, and live a purpose-driven life on your schedule, not your clients'. I'm your host, Ryan Whedon, and each week I'll teach you awesome, actionable ways to tap into your personal greatness. Through marketing, mindset, and confidence training, it's time to unlock the next level of you. Let's grow. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hairpreneur Show. I am Ryan Whedon, your host. Today I have a very special guest, somebody that I've looked up to for years and years and years, somebody who continues to inspire our industry. We've got David Thurston here, the Pulp Riot CEO and co-founder, widely known, and he's just a rock star in and of himself. I am so happy to have you here, David.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to spending time with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, David, I've known you for a little while now, and I've had the pleasure of doing a video for Pulp Riot, and I think we did that one video, which was a lot of fun, and you and your company have been front runners and just a company that we can look up to as far as like your branding is just incredible. You're always right on the cusp of like what's modern, what's happening, and moving forward at a rapid pace. You are the CEO and founder of the fastest growing color company ever. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's incredible. What led to that?
There's probably a few things I could point to on why we had the success that we've had so far. One of the reasons why is that we try not to appeal to everybody, and that seems counterintuitive. But I believe a lot of the brands in our industry are trying to make it so that everybody likes them. And I don't think that that's the way to grow really quickly. You want to find your little cult, your group of people who love you, and then really just focusing on creating something that resonates with them. We also, our timing was impeccable. I mean, we came along right as the social media revolution started happening. And what happened then is so different than social media now. And it was just right at the right time where, do you remember before we used the word social media star and before we used the word social media influencer, what made it so potent a way of marketing was that it was very genuine and authentic. And you had the other brands using celebrity spokespeople who weren't as potent because you knew they were getting paid. And here you had this group of people who were influencing and inspiring and educating the beauty industry who weren't getting paid to do it. So it meant a lot to the people who were following them. And now you see just a few years later, that's all been shifted on their head. Mm-hmm. Now you have social media influencers who are the celebrity spokespeople who are getting paid. And so things have really changed, but our timing was just right. So I think those are two big reasons. I think the third is that I'm a salon owner and I spend the majority of my life inside of a hair salon. And my wife, who's my co-founder, is a hairstylist. She's been doing it for over 20 years. And the other people who are high up in our company are hairstylists and salon owners. It's just, we know what tools people need. We know what they want to hear. And we know how to reach through people's phones and grab them right in the heart.
Right. You seem to know them better than they know themselves sometimes. That you want to have those messages that you put out there with your brand that they're already thinking, right? So that they're just instantly associating themselves with that. And I love how you said cult, because we look at cult as such a negative word, but then if you look at, you start with a cult, like a niche brand, and they say the riches are in the niches, cult becomes a culture, right? Once you develop it more and once more and more people start to see themselves as a part of it, it's no longer what you might consider like a negative, like cult, like American Horror Story cult. It's now a culture.
It's a culture. And that's what we've created. We have a Facebook group where our culture comes together and they all get to create this community and they have shared values. And that's what we provide. I think it's different in our industry to have a brand whose core value is positivity. And because I think before us, when I go to industry events, it felt like the people on stage that I would see was very exclusive. They look down on you. After the show, they didn't come out and mingle. And so I think a lot of people are drawn to that and want to be surrounded by people who are positive, particularly now more than ever.
I think I had those same types of feelings when I was going to my first hair shows and saw that. And as much as I was inspired to want to be on that stage, I got that same vibe from a lot of those top educators, those big brands that would look down upon people that weren't in their position because they had this powerful presence and you just weren't there. And they're just like, I have secrets. I'm not going to share them with you. That's one of our core mantras is no secrets, no secret approach to teaching, to learning. We want to make sure that whatever we know, we're going to give it all to you. And hopefully it'll help you move forward in your life. So I love that.
There's an insecurity that some people have, and they are concerned they're vulnerable and that you're going to take over. So they don't provide you with anything and they keep you at bay. But I do feel like there's a new way of doing things, which is more effective. And that is trying to pull people up. Almost every point in my career where we started to have more of a growth spurt of success, it really does come from finding ways to make other people more successful. And when that happens, a funny thing happens. We continually get more successful. So it's a good way to do things.
Yeah, you're going in the positive way as opposed to somebody that is trying to hold on to everything they can, thinking somebody might steal it. Then they're going to look at how they can cut down the competition, and their whole outlook on life becomes glass half empty and very negative, right? And it's not healthy. It's like being jealous. Jealous is fueled by anger.
I agree. And I think it's kind of a good thing that everybody has certain people who they might feel are competitors. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's healthy. But sometimes it's really nice to get to know your competitors and figure out how maybe you could work together. I had the pleasure recently of going out to lunch with the founder of Pravana. And Pravana and Pulp Riot battled it out for years.
I remember that.
Trying to get who's going to use our purple dye. And we had two different approaches at doing things. And what an awesome experience to be able to go to lunch. His name's Steve Goddard, great guy, and hear his journey and his story and what he was thinking about us and what we were thinking about him at the beginning of this whole journey. So, but I think it is important not to be too guarded and to share.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now, you've always had cool hair and lots of tattoos. You look like a hairstylist. Have you ever done hair yourself?
Well, thank you. It's the biggest compliment I get. I've educated inside of salons for product knowledge classes before. And the biggest compliment I get is someone asking me, where do I do hair? Because I think one of the reasons why I've been successful in this industry is because I've got equal parts left brain and right brain. There's a part of me that feels comfortable in the analytical world, but I feel even more comfortable in the creative environment. And I think those who are pretty in the middle have a good shot at being successful in this industry. But I have never been a licensed hairstylist, but I've had plenty of opportunity to do hair. And sometimes I get to collaborate with some of the best colorists in the world, and where they'll throw me a pair of gloves and a brush and they say, let's do this, and learn from them. I've got 2 daughters and a wife, all with very long hair, with lots of hair. And so I've had a lot of opportunity there. And early on, when I was a child and I'd go to church with my grandparents, they would, to keep me quiet, they'd hand me a book and it had hair in it, and you would braid the hair, and I would do it for hours. And so I guess there was a comfortability right from the beginning.
That's incredible. And your wife, Alexis, is the hairstylist in the family, right? And daughters are probably on their way, I'm sure.
Yeah, my wife, Alexis, is the hairstylist. It's been wonderful being quarantined with her. Almost on every 12 days, I have her do my hair again, which is great. Yeah, and we are a very creative family, and that's what I think we take a lot of joy from, that creative aspect.
So you were saying that the right brain and left brain, you're somewhere in the middle. And it's funny, I was on a podcast recently as a guest, and I had said the same thing. I feel like I found that perfect synergy. My brain is like, I love the technical side of things. I love the business side of things, but I also like the flexibility of being creative. And I think one of our biggest goals as leaders and coaches in this industry is to try to teach those full-blown creatives how to have that business sense, how to learn that entrepreneurial side to help them share their talents with the world. What would you tell somebody, and you probably do this often, your biggest creatives, how do you tell them to start being more analytical, more left-brained?
Yeah, it's interesting. By the way, you do strike me as somebody who's got a really good balance when it comes to creativity and your analytical skills. You have something to share. And the problem is a lot of people who have something to share aren't organized enough and aren't thinking big picture enough to figure out how to take that message and share it with other people. And you're clearly killing it at doing that. I really focus on trying to change certain behaviors. And once those behaviors are changed, things start to fall in place. The number one problem that usually happens with people who are super far on the creative side, and this is going to sound really simple, but the number one problem they have is they're not on time. Over and over and over again, chronically not on time. And if you're a hairstylist, if you could stay on time, you're going to have a lot more success in this industry. And the problem is so many aren't. They're very reactive to other people's whims, and they don't take that seriously. And so that's always what I try to teach people. Just working, if you wanted to work for Pulp Riot, for example, and you wanted to be the person who's going across the world, growing a brand by being on stage, you can be the world's greatest hairstylist, but that's not going to get you on our stage. You have to be on time, and you have to show up prepared and not try to wing it. So I think those are just these little behavioral things really are very important. It's starting your day off with some kind of control, I think is very important. And some people just kind of hop out of bed and they just let life happen to them. One thing that I started doing is I make my bed every morning. So there's another behavioral thing you can do to get you on track. And why do I do that? Because at the very beginning of the day, I accomplish something immediately. And it sets me off on this course of accomplishing things. So there's another behavioral habit that I think just helps people get into the right groove.
Yeah, being on time is huge, and it drives me crazy when I'm trying to do something and somebody's not on time. If I show up for an appointment or a horse riding lesson, which I was taking recently, and the person, great coach, but always like half an hour late or even longer, and I'm just like about to leave. I'm just like, I have stuff to do. Same thing goes whether it's for showing up for training, for a show, being prepared, but also like I feel like a lot of our stylists that we know and associate with, they are on stylist time. They know that they feel like they have the luxury to take as long as they need to with a client, but they get pissed off if one of their clients is late. But they can run as late as they want. And it's just a kind of a double-edged, sword.
Having so many stylists that I've worked with in my own salon, I see that. And those who rise to the very top start to understand how important it is to be on time. My mentor, his name's Ted Nelson, and that was the first time I became an entrepreneur, is by being his partner. And I remember the first appointment we ever showed up at, it was to raise money for a company. And we got in 15 minutes early, and he gave me a lesson, and he told me, this is Lombardi time, named after the football coach, Coach Lombardi. He's like, if you're 15 minutes early, that means you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And I've taken that with me still to now. You saw that I logged on to this Zoom meeting on time.
Exactly at 11, right? And I made sure to do the same thing because I value your time. I'm here prepping and getting everything ready. And one thing I have learned with anything, whether it's podcasting or live streaming video, is that you need to make sure and test everything at least a half an hour early, because you might forget to plug in the power. You might forget to charge a battery. You might forget to you might have internet issues. Make sure, I've run into all those. You just got to make sure that ready to rock to the best of my ability. And then God willing, everything will still run smoothly.
I'm sure you've given lots of presentations. And if you're ever in a position where you've got to show up in front of a group and give a PowerPoint presentation on a screen, take it from me, based on experience, something's going to go wrong every single time. Mm-hmm. And there's very few presentations that I sit through where the speaker, it doesn't take the first 5 or 10 minutes troubleshooting to get it right. So you show up early, you troubleshoot it, and be prepared.
Yeah. Seriously, every single time something goes wrong. Nothing actually went wrong today, except for I have a little daughter, and she comes and tries to pull out the wires into the computer and everything like that. So had to reel her in and lock her out of the studio for a bit until I got everything.
Plan for that.
Yeah, exactly. But that's awesome. So have you always considered yourself an entrepreneur?
Well, I was asked the question and I wrote it down. I was in a group of kids for a church group, and they had us write down what we wanted to do for our jobs. I think I was like 9 years old, and I wrote down I wanted to own a restaurant. And so I guess from early on, I wanted to do something like that. I went to UCLA, and I wanted to do something creative, but it never really felt like I had a pathway forward in a creative pursuit. You see your parents, and my father is an attorney. And then you spend time with their friends, and they're generally, accountants or bankers or business people. And so I didn't really have that role model of you can be successful and creative. So I got a degree in economics, which is as creative as you can get with numbers, but it's still pretty left-brained. And I then moved up to San Francisco and took a job at an international consulting firm, and it very, very left brain, and felt like I just wasn't able to exercise my right brain. And I enjoyed being around right brain creative people so much. And a lot of my friends were hairstylists. And so then I finally took a leap and decided to become an entrepreneur, and left my career and kind of my education behind in order to do it. And I'll tell you that once I got into it, I realized it's exactly where I should be. And I don't know if other people have that, but I do feel like a lot of hairstylists do have that feeling. It's where they want to be, and it's where they feel comfortable. And that's what happened as soon as I became an entrepreneur.
What would you tell a hairstylist that might wonder, am I an entrepreneur or do I just want to have more clients in my chair? What do you think characteristics make up an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. I believe entrepreneurs think big. And so maybe if you're just satisfied with what you have, you may not be an entrepreneur. But if you always have that itch that you want something more, and you're dreaming about it, and you've got ideas, and you're like thinking about ways you can make things better. And if you're thinking about there's problems out there and how do I solve them, those are probably pointing you in the direction that you want to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm. Is Alexis, your wife, an entrepreneur as well?
She is. I think it took a little while to uncover that, but she is through and through always thinking about ways of solving issues. And she gets consumed with trying to solve challenges. She's created over 200 products, and I don't know a lot of living people right now in our industry who've done that. So every single Pulp Riot product, other than 5 that my good friend Casey designed, and a few others that Doug designed, but are things that Alexis designed from inception to completion. And she's worked behind her chair her entire career. And so that process is very entrepreneurial. It is what problem does this product have that I'm using behind the chair, and how do I make it better? That's, to me, the hallmark of what an entrepreneur is.
Yeah. I want to just quickly dive into your relationship. Nothing creepy, but
we can be creepy.
One thing that I feel a lot of people say to me when they hear my story about how Jenny, my wife, quit her job to work for the company, and she's the creative. She makes everything pretty with Masters of Balayage and with the branding and the logos and everything. And I'm the big picture guy. I'm the entrepreneur. She's the creative behind it, but she's not entrepreneurial, but we work together. And they're like, oh, you're so lucky you have somebody like that. You guys are always together. You're always working on moving forward. I mean, the truth is it can be very challenging because it's hard to shut off business and personal. And how do you keep your personal life rich? How do you keep your business moving forward? And how do you stay friends all the time? Because I can only imagine that every now and then you might butt heads.
We're human. And so we definitely have those moments. I will say, shockingly, it doesn't happen a lot, and that's being honest. I think both of us would admit that we wouldn't have what we have today if it weren't for each other. It required both of us to do it, and for many reasons. One would just be for the sanity's sake. When you do what we're doing, there's a lot of crap that comes along with it, and it gives you somebody to talk to or vent to who understands what you're doing. So I think more people should do it. Alexis and I started off as friends. And I think that was important. It established kind of a pattern on who's in charge of this and who's in charge of that without the ego getting in that sometimes does when you're a husband and wife team. Alexis was my hairstylist, and I knew her for 20 years before we got together.
Oh, wow.
In fact, my first company was a hair product line called Level 6, and you've never heard about it because it was a failure. I went to my very first hair show with my company, Level 6. It was the Long Beach Hair Show. And I rented a 10 by 10 booth. And most of your listeners may have gone to a big hair show. And if you think about a hair show, you've got these giant booths in the middle. And on the periphery, you've got these small young entrepreneurs who are trying to break into the game. So I had a 10 by 10 booth, and I had a folding table, 2 chairs, brochures, and some products sitting on there. And I needed somebody to help me. at the booth. So I called my hairstylist, Alexis, and her and I sat there at that booth for 3 days and watched everybody ignore us. And they ignored us because they were all on their way to these giant Goliath booths, behemoth booths, that looks like the Las Vegas Strip. They're just lined up and they're loud, and there's famous stylists on their stages, and it's L'Oreal and Wella and Paul Mitchell and Aveda all lined up. And here we were, level 6 booth. Everyone passed us by. And you could imagine what it's like returning, her and I, 10 years later, to the very same show with a Goliath booth that attracted more attention than the other booths, that was shinier, brighter, louder. And that journey from those 10 years of feeling like David and defeating Goliath after 10 years, it's been a really special journey. And to be able to share that with someone's really cool, but also just being able to bounce ideas off each other. We get in these creative modes that are very similar to what I hear people describe of taking LSD, this creative openness popping in our minds that wouldn't pop out if we weren't talking to each other. And it's a real recipe for success.
That's incredible. That must have been such a feeling too, to return and just be like, that's where our booth was, right over in that corner, and nobody came and saw us. And we just felt like probably pretty miserable as you're just getting ignored, right?
Hey, after day one, we were like, we have to come back. And, but yeah, it's from going to a failure to a success is very sweet. People may have heard my story before, but it's important to note that success does not come without the failure. There would be no Pulp Riot if there wasn't first a level 6 of failure. And that's important for people to know. Then
you went straight to level 10. So at level 6, what year was that it was introduced?
2004.
2004.
Is, when we created level 6.
Okay. And then how soon after that was Pulp Riot made?
Pulp Riot was released in 2016. So 12 years later.
Wow. Okay. What would you say your biggest challenges were with level 6? And what did you learn from that you were able to successfully employ into creating Pulp Riot?
Good question. The challenge is we had the wrong marketing plan. We had thought that we could create something similar to a multi-level marketing program within the professional beauty industry. Multi-level marketing, for those who don't know, some people refer to them as pyramid schemes or network marketing, these kind of pursuits. And we thought that would work, and it just doesn't. Hairstylists aren't interested in calling other people and introducing them to a product. They're more focused on making sure their clients are happy. That's generally speaking, not for everybody. And we also we didn't raise enough money. And there was a lot for me to learn about the industry that I didn't realize that I needed to know. And so through that process, it allowed me to go into thousands of salons. I was a salesperson for my company. I was an educator for my company. I was the bookkeeper for my company. You could imagine knowing, and I was the VP of marketing. You could imagine getting to know all those things might serve me well in the future if I were to create another product line, and making all the mistakes was important. But that failure, I found myself after it failed and not knowing what to do. I didn't feel like I could go back to the corporate world. Who would hire an entrepreneur? Who would hire a failed entrepreneur? That ship had sailed. I turned my back on it and there was no going back. But I didn't know what to do. I actually talked my friend into throwing me the keys to his hair salon and allowing me to run it as a general manager of the salon. And it was a little bit humiliating. I felt like I wasn't getting the most out of my career. It's not what I expected when I dropped out of my corporate job, that I would be a hair salon manager for a salon. But I absolutely found out I loved it. And I loved going to work every day. I loved the challenges of figuring out how to make a room full of stylists be positive throughout the entire day. And that's the name of the game. If you're a good manager of a salon, it's all about changing the mood of the salon. And so I loved pulling those levers, which allowed me to serve me well, as you can imagine, with my own hair salon. So my story is really about collecting experiences and learning from them and putting it all together. And I didn't have a master plan. I mean, if you had told me that one day I'd be running the fastest growing color company in the beauty industry, I would have called you a liar. But accumulating at level 6, learning through failure, going to being a salon manager at a salon I didn't own, gave me experiences in owning my own salon. You'd imagine by the end of it, I had a pretty well-rounded view of what stylists like, what salon owners want and how to design certain things because you're designing things all the time. So yeah, all those served me well.
So when level 6 ultimately, I hate to use the word failure, but when you learn from that, at no point did you say like, I just quit, I give up, I'm just going to find a job and try to figure out what I want in my life? Or did you think about that you tried it and maybe being an entrepreneur is just not for me?
Yeah. I hear people on podcasts talk about failure as part of the equation. What a lot of them don't tell you is failure sucks.
It's terrible.
Like it sucks and it's hard and it's not easy. And it's the main reason why people don't even take risks to start with is because they don't want to see the other end and have to experience the failure. It's brutal. And if I were to go back to that time in my life, I felt I had a lot of peers who were having success. And I felt like I couldn't understand. I believed in myself inside, but I felt like I was not successful and it was very hard for me to deal with. And, I was at age 39 and I was running this hair salon as a general manager and I was paying myself $24,000 a year. At age 39 is not what I imagined when I was at UCLA graduating in a degree in economics. And so, yeah, there was a time where I thought, I made the wrong move. My friends have all started to climb the corporate ladder, but I kept thinking about what my mentor told me. And he says, quit trying to climb the corporate ladder. You got to own that ladder. And so I stuck with it and it's paid off.
So then you were a general manager. And how soon after that, how many years did you work as a general manager before you opened up? I assume your next part of your chapter in your story is Butterfly Loft.
Yeah, opening up Butterfly Loft. Yeah, so I ran David Douglas Salon in Thurston, and there's a second location in Fountain Valley. This is in Orange County, California. Each salon had about 30 hairstylists at it. And it took me, I think I was there for 2 years. After just a few months, I knew what my new goal was going to be. It wasn't to start a hair product company. It was really to start a hair salon and start my own salon family. You can imagine, I just learned everything there is to know. I used to do experiments. I would play around with the retail shelves and I'd move products in different places and see if they would sell more product because of that. I started to try to learn on why at the time the companies like Enjoy and Unite were lighting the world on fire. And I'm like, why? And trying to figure out what was it that was making the stylists fall in love with their brands. And you could imagine that I took advantage of that knowledge later on in my life. But the one thing I learned the most is I would drive there from Los Angeles. So it was a good hour drive. And I realized that if I walk through the doors of the salon, and I come in around 10 to try to avoid rush hour, if I walked through the salon doors with a certain mood or attitude, it would change the day completely. And I would literally do experiments where I would come in and I would say something negative. When someone asked me, something about anything, start talking about the weather and complaining about the weather, whatever it might be. It was a different day. Whereas if I came in and I proactively came in, I'd go over to the stereo, turn on some feel good vibes. I'd go around, start talking to people, to clients, work in the room, etc. The whole day was different. And I can only imagine those stylists when they went home to their spouses or their loved ones or went to the bar afterwards, they changed somebody's mood because of that as well. It's something I try to carry through today. And it is cliche to say, but successful people, if I were to say one attribute they have in common, it's that they're positive and they're spreading positivity and they're lifting people up. I believe you could only have two effects on people. You either lift them up and you inspire them, or you have a negative effect in their life. So you have one choice or the other. The more I meet more and more successful people, they're lifting people up with their attitude. It's something I notice.
This actually, I was going to continue on with your journey, which I will, but you're talking about how you can approach the world every day and the attitude that you have affects everybody around you. This has been a really effed up year. How do you carry that positivity into this world that just seems to be crumbling for so many people?
That's a great question. And I actually feel it's my responsibility to do just that. And when I do it, it comes right back to me. I do find that it's interesting. And the more successful you get, the more people that are around you who are successful. It's just kind of way that you evolve, I guess. And I do notice the more successful people I'm around, maybe acknowledge that there's a coronavirus, but they don't talk about it in the first 10 sentences like the rest of the human civilization does. When you hear, how are you doing? And you say, okay, all things considering, or, this blah, blah, blah. It just sets off it goes in the wrong way. We're all dealing with it. I'll tell you, there's a lot of people suffering, and for them, I feel bad. And for those who are lost their jobs, I just absolutely feel terrible about that. For anybody who's got a job and their health, they're abundantly blessed by having those two things. And I think it's all time for all of us to acknowledge, it's there, but what is it really preventing us from doing? I think the biggest thing it's doing is providing everybody with a better excuse to complain. And a lot of people want to take that. It's just like saying when it's hot weather, it's hot outside. It's the same thing. People are looking for something, but now it's socially okay to say something negative right away. And I'd love to see that change.
So surround yourself with positive people. Try to be the purveyor of positivity at all costs, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, we can't go to concerts. I get that. And I miss going to concerts. And I'm certain that before long, we will be able to go to concerts. It's certainly not the reason to wake up and be negative the rest of the day. We can't go to restaurants inside, but we can go outside and we can sit down and with people and have a meal. We should feel really good about that. When you really come down and you put a list of things we can't do, it actually isn't very long. But we're all went in through that lockdown, and we just held on to this feelings of we're trapped. We can't do anything. And here we are, you and I, being able to socialize and communicate. There's things we can do.
Totally get it. You've got some cool things coming to help inspire people as well. One of them is Rockstar Camp, which I want to hear a lot about. But first, I just want to go back to, you were at Butterfly Loft, you opened that. And then when did the education start? I'm sure you had your in-salon education, but then there was Butterfly Circus, right? That was, you were touring around. Was that the next thing that happened, or when did the whole education before the product release?
Sure. So Butterfly Loft, we opened up this giant salon. It was way bigger than we intended it to be. We had so many chairs to fill, and Alexis and I looked at each other and thought, how are we going to do this? And we thought, let's do education. And instead of thinking about our education program as only being for us, let's open it up to everybody in Los Angeles. There's a lot of independent artists who don't have education. Let's just get it out there. And so that's what we did, and I loved it. Every Wednesday night, you'd have a sea of people dressed in black coming up the escalator up to our salon. We'd have the music up loud, playing music that wasn't that was more challenging, I guess. There would be cocktails and appetizers pour themselves a drink, and then there'd be education. And because we did that, everybody was in our salon, and on the way out, of course, they would leave and they'd grab me and they say, do you have any stations available? And I go, in fact, we do. And they'd want to be part of this culture, this creative culture. So we started it that way. And what did we do there? That was the kernel of creating a community, and the idea of you could create this community through education. And then a funny thing happened along the way. Social media comes out. And we started to think of ourselves as, let's not open our education to just Los Angeles. We now could have a global audience. Let's open it up to everybody and share what we know to the outside world. And once we started doing that, and we did it really as a way we started promoting our stylists heavily as a way to build their clientele and also to have some stability inside of our salon. We thought if we make them successful and they recognize us as being a reason why they're successful, then they're not going to want to work at a salon down the street. But a funny thing happened. We tried to make them successful, and they became very successful. But we became successful through the process. And I was putting my face on our Instagram page, telling people what my values were and what I believed in. And I started getting recognized at hair shows, and people started to come from other parts of the world to California on vacation, and they stopped by our salon to see this mythical place where we were taking blonde women and turning them into mermaids. And so it started all in education, and it morphed into something once social media came out, because all of a sudden we realized that me and my salon were educating and inspiring. We were creating trends. And this was something that used to be only for the big product companies, right? That was their job. And all of a sudden this salon in LA is doing this kind of thing. But then I noticed there was certain individuals in other parts of the country who were also inspiring, educating, and creating trends. And while reading a book one day in Costa Rica called Never Eat Alone, I had a eureka moment. And it was why don't I connect with all these people? And why don't we work together? And I said, if I've got all this influence, what would it be like if all of us got together? And that's when Butterfly Circus was born. And I was calling people who now are famous in their industry, but at the time weren't quite as famous as they are now. Nobody was calling them, asking them to be social media influencers. And in fact, almost every one of them had never educated before in their lives. But when I called them, and since nobody else was, they all picked up the phone and they'd say, David, I love what you're doing out there in LA. And I'd say, I love what you're doing. And next thing you know, they're all in Los Angeles and we're teaching a class to sold out classes for $25,000 a night and sometimes $80,000 a night. And this, of course, you can see how that would just morph into Pulp Riot.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Now, during that time, what was Pulp, before Pulp Riot was inspired? Were you already doing vivid colors? Was vivids like the thing?
Vivids were the thing. In our salon, they were catching on. And so we were playing with vivids and we were really looking at ways of what do we want from these things to make them better? I look fondly back at Butterfly Circus. The people are larger than life personalities now. I give a lot of them credit for inspiring me along the way. You know, there's people like Larissa Love, who was renting a station from me in my salon, who early on in this Instagram evolution, I was able to see from her what power she had and the idea that she can post a picture and you just see the likes, thousands of likes come in. You know, in exchange, I gave her first opportunity to educate. There's a lot of these win-win relationships. There's Ricky Zito, who was living in a swamp in New Orleans, and he comes out and rises to the very top of our industry. And Exo Stylist XO and Confessions of a Hairstylist, J. Wesley Olson, Glam Iris, all these people, you know, they were the first generation of people. And now everything's morphed and it's not about being a giant social media influencer. It's these people, it's getting a large group of people to really like what you're doing and people realizing that they're not getting paid to like you.
Right.
And so now you've got this generation of like Style Lush Salon and Jessica Power Paints. And there's some of these young, talented people. And it's a lot of fun to see these new up and comers who are just as talented as people with millions of followers. It's just they didn't come out at the right time when algorithms were really kind to you.
Right. Yeah. Now they're tricky. Now you're lucky to get any growth.
it used to be back in the day. You remember this? You would post a picture and all your followers would see it.
Right.
That's how it worked.
Right. Good luck with that now, right? Yeah. You don't even see like some of your best friends anymore.
Totally.
That's so cool. And then, okay, so you actually used some of these artists to help you create Pulp Riot.
Correct. And that was important to us. We felt like we get the product in their hands, start looking at what colors they really wanted. We had them send over submissions. And it's interesting, the way we do it, and we still do it today, is we use other people's product lines to formulate our product. So the early days, it would be taking other people's product lines, combining them together, and then trying to come up with the color that you want to create. And then you go to the lab and say, this is our inspiration color. That's how it all began. And then you start taking out Pantone color charts and saying, in the dream world, here's the colors I'd have as well. And you'd start rounding out stuff. The process is super complicated between that but that's as simple as it is. So for those who are out there going, you know what, I want to create a product line, it can be done. And you don't have to be a Harvard trained chemist to be able to pull it off. In fact, I spent a lot of my quarantine time writing a book, and which I hope to launch sometime in the next year. And it's going to give a lot of people insight on how to start a company. And that's what everybody asks me, like, oh, that's great. I would really have ideas, but how do you do it? And there's not a lot of books out there that just break it down and specifically say, here's what you do if you want to roll up your sleeves and actually create a company.
And you started with a culture and started with education, it sounds like, first, before you launched full-fledged into designing Pulp Riot, where I think is brilliant. Having a brand first, having all that first, I think is just huge, because then you can release things and people already know about you. I think a lot of tricky entrepreneurs, a lot of challenges a lot of entrepreneurs have is they'll create a great product, but if nobody knows about them, it's hard to really sell that and create a brand at the same time.
Totally right. And brand is so important. I mean, we are a company in the business of making other people successful. And then, oh yeah, we've got a product. That's how your business you have to think about your business. You have to think about it. What purpose do you serve? And don't have it be as product focused. Once, a company's around for 20 years, the founder's gone, and there's just not the culture or story around, then those brands start to focus on product and product performance. And what does their product do that other products don't? It's something that is not interesting to me, but you're right. What is the difference between the time I went with Level 6 to the hair show and everybody ignored us, and the time that I went with Pulp Riot and everybody wanted to be at our booth? The difference between the two is Pulp Riot, I created a brand before launching a product. Mm-hmm. That was a very key to our success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. It makes total sense. Yeah.
I remember back in the Butterfly Circus days, we made it a rule that we would never have more men on stage than women. We'd always have more women on stage than men. And then we were very vocal about that. So that became part of my brand and the Butterfly Circus brand. So that's just one example of when you start launching Pulp Riot, we still do the same thing. It's very much opportunities for women, and that's a thing. It's this thing that becomes brand, that becomes Pulp Riot, that attracts people to it. It's a value.
Is that because you saw more men on stage in this female-run business, more or less?
Yeah, that first show I went with Level 6, you open up the catalog, and all the opportunities were the men.
Wow.
The big stage were the men. Who was going on at prime time? The men. And there just wasn't much opportunity there. And when you look at our industry being over 80% female, where's the role model? And why is it that it's happening? I have a lot of theories on why it is. And some of it makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's important to me to play a part in changing that. Not to say that opportunities shouldn't go to men, Ryan.
Exactly.
It's that I think it should look a lot like our industry, and that perhaps 80% of the opportunities should go to women.
Yeah, I never actually thought about that before. But yeah, when you do go around a lot of these stages at the hair shows, a lot of men are on there. I mean, I guess because they're maybe louder voices, maybe a little bit more outgoing. Maybe, I don't know. Why do you think that is?
In the early days, it was the same guy. I felt like it was on every stage. They all looked the same. They all wore True Religion jeans. They were all middle-aged, and they all had British accents, and a lot of them sounded fake. And for some reason, a lot of brands thought that's going to sell, and that's what's going to get people in there. For whatever reason, maybe it does. But I think that you could go to a concert and you could bow down to somebody and you say there's a role model or whatever it might be. But I think it's even more of a connection with the audience when the person in the audience goes, I could do that. I could be up there. I could aspire to be that. Mm-hmm. And you don't get that if it doesn't look like them and doesn't sound like them, it doesn't feel like them.
Now with Pulp Riot, you've had this huge success, and then you were actually approached by L'Oreal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to purchase Pulp Riot. Is that how it went?
Yes. We launched our brand with our cell phones.
Mm-hmm. Cell phones, great.
We did. We had no sales rep. We had no money spent on advertising. And all we did was we took our cell phones and we did an Instagram post, and the Instagram post said, everything's about to change. That was our first one. And 23 months after we touched the button to post that picture, 23 months, we sold our company to the largest beauty brand in the world, L'Oreal, a name where you could go to any corner of the globe and say the name L'Oreal and people who that is, which obviously when I pushed the button, maybe my biggest dream of all would be I would sell it to L'Oreal one day, 30 years from then. Mm-hmm. 23 months just seems stupid. And when you think about it, it takes a while to sell your company. There's a lot you go through. My first connection with L'Oreal was 11 months after we started the company. Got a message. I was at the Premier Orlando Hair Show. Got a message that someone from New York wants to fly down and meet with me. And we're going to go out to breakfast to just talk. And it was someone from L'Oreal. And so we chose a place where we wanted to get a quiet table. And we didn't want anybody to see us because what's the head of L'Oreal doing with the head of Pulp Riot? We didn't want people to start talking. And so the waitress brings us over to our table. And to our left is the table for Modern Salon Magazine. To our right is American Salon Magazine.
Oh, Jesus.
And so we had a first conversation kind of talking in code just a little bit. But They were interested in buying Pulp Riot. There was a lot of promises made. They promised us that they would not L'Orealize Pulp Riot. Instead, they wanted to buy us to Riotize L'Oreal. Mm-hmm. They told us we would continue to run our business in Los Angeles with the same employees, that I would continue to run the company and Alexis would continue to create products. And they said to me, David, you're not going to be an employee of L'Oreal. Well, we will be employees of Pulp Riot. You just tell us what we need to do in order for us to help you achieve your vision of getting your products across the globe and creating a cool community and culture, which is in every country in the world. So that was the deal. And then there's money. And the money is life-changing, and it could be life-changing in one of two ways. I think now that it's been 2 years and I've processed this, I've talked to therapists, it's a very unusual position to be in, but it could have made me lazy because I would never have to work again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It could have meant that I took on some bad habits, or I'm living on an island somewhere being not productive. Or it could make it so that you could answer that question that everybody asks themselves. And that is, if I was rich, financially free, and never had to work again, what would I do with my life? And that's what it's given me the opportunity to do. And I don't get the pleasure from seeing sales reports that I do with working with artists and seeing them succeed and feeding off of their energy. So the answer to the question, what would you do if you had all the money you ever needed? My answer is, I'd love to run the fastest growing, coolest, edgiest color company in the beauty industry. And so now I'm doing it without thinking about getting paid. It doesn't matter. What I'm doing it is what brings me joy and what could bring other people joy.
That's incredible. Have you ever thought you'd actually be able to answer that question?
No. As I told you, at age 39, I was making $24,000 a year and feeling like a failure. And you just flash forward, that was 39. I'm 49 now. And we are just abundantly blessed. And we recognize it every day.
That's incredible. I hope to be there one day. I just think too, though, it's the more successful I become and the more money that comes in. I mean, if I look back 10 years ago to where I am now, it's like a dream to have this kind of, to start this financial freedom and start having this money coming in so I can really focus on what I want to do, like you're saying. One thing I have realized, and I'm sure you realize this as well, is that you could have all the money in the world and it's not going to make you happy. You have to find purpose in your daily life. You have to find purpose, or else it's just you feel completely unfulfilled.
It's so cliche, and it's so, I don't even like to say it, but you just said it, money doesn't buy happiness. And there's a period of time where after selling my company and you have the money and that's what you were kind of working toward, even though you love what you're doing, there's always that thing if you're striving to have a better lifestyle. And then when you have it, there is a period where you start questioning what your why is, what's your motivation, what are you doing it for? And it didn't come at first. And it was very kind of L'Oreal to hire me a coach who was part life coach, part business coach, to help me try to discover what that is. And that before, the growth part of it was what you were really looking for. I'm going to grow something into something. And then when you don't, that's not your motivation anymore. What is it? And you're right. I mean, once you buy a few things and that's exciting, but I can't think of anything that I want. And then what are you working for if you're not working for things?
Right.
It's a good thing to go through, and it makes you evaluate why you're doing some certain things. My coach worked with me on, why does it make me feel better if I get more likes on Instagram, for example? And why do I check back to see how many likes I got? And it's just really revealing on what your attitudes about money and people's acceptance. I look at you and I have no doubt that you're doing what you love and that you also are an entrepreneur and ambitious and want even more. And you've talked about looking in the rearview mirror and saying, oh, this is where I came and I could see this growth that's happened. In my journey from level 6 to Pulp Riot, you don't see it forward. In fact, it looks like you're not even growing. All of a sudden, I'm working as manager at a hair salon, and then I'm owning a salon, and now I'm doing this education thing. It didn't feel so much like growth when you're in it, but when you look back, it is. It's all about challenging yourself and getting out of your comfort zone and taking risks, because even though there's failures, it's a sideways action that feels like, or it's up and down, up and down. When you look back at the end, you connect the dots and there is growth, but you don't see it when you're in it.
Right. What do you think some of your most successful habits are? Because I feel like habits and the consistency of which we employ those habits make us who we are. It's pretty factual. So I would really quickly want to hear about maybe some of your best habits, and then like making your bed, I think is a great one. And then maybe some of the habits that you wish could be better.
Sure. And I definitely do not have it all figured out yet. And I've listened to podcasts where a successful person will talk about their routines and as if there aren't any bad habits. Mm-hmm. The truth is in the mornings, I do have a routine, and I actually find this to be very common amongst successful people. Tony Robbins talks about priming yourself for the day. And I really like that word, priming yourself. And so after I make my bed, I spend time doing meditation. I only do 10 minutes of meditation because I lose it after that. And the whole purpose for me for that isn't that it makes me some super happy person. What it does is I feel like it gives me moments throughout the day that have flashes of brilliance. It just feels like it opens my mind to new ideas, and by doing that. And after I meditate, I give myself a small pep talk, and I do it out loud. And I would never, it's embarrassing that if someone were to listen in on it, but it's just a kind of a mantra, I guess, if you will. And I always, if I have a lot on my mind, I then journal. And it's just writing all that crap that's going on in your mind on a piece of paper. And I don't revisit it. It just gets it out there. And through that, sometimes I find creative solutions to the problems that I'm dealing with. I have a sauna, and I spend 12 minutes in the sauna, and where I think in the sauna about what I'm doing that day. And I'll tell you, I do that because I have a weakness, and the weakness is anxiety. And so if I don't really think about the meetings I have during the day and the events I have to be at, or this podcast, for example, I have to think about it. What could go right? What could go wrong? The wrong's not so bad. And then I go into them with just a little bit less anxiety. And so that's really the way I prime for my day. And think about that versus the person who just hopped out of bed, who has the advantage.
Right. That hit the snooze button 17 times and they're late for their first client.
Yeah.
Right. That's amazing to hear. All right. I want to jump into Rockstar Camp. This is something that is happening now, or that it's going to happen?
Rockstar Camp is underway. And who doesn't want to go to Rockstar Camp? Who doesn't want to be a rock star?
I want to be a rock star. You look at my background here with all the guitars on the wall.
I see these awesome guitars on the back wall, and you absolutely look like a rock star in front of them. You know, Rockstar Camp is our solution to a problem. Because of lockdown, we can't be flying educators and our marketing people across the country. And we needed to find a way to continue to educate digitally and also film videos of people. So we needed to keep that branding going. In addition, at the same time, we recognized in Pulp Riot that we had a diversity issue, and we needed to figure out a way to fast track and get people from all cultures to be rock stars in Pulp Riot. And so we started to look, and we thought, okay, we have my stylists at Butterfly Loft, and a lot of them are already our educators, but there's a lot of them who aren't. And we thought we could work with them. We don't need to fly them anywhere. We have the venue at Butterfly Loft where we could shoot video and they could educate. And so we're going to work with them a lot more during this lockdown time. And then we thought, well, how do we fast track these artists of color into becoming rock stars in Pulp Riot and making their careers more successful, just like we've been doing with other cultures? And so we thought about it, and we thought, well, why don't we have a very intensive education training for these people? And we do it through the magic of Zoom. And we have an 8-week intensive course where they spend hours each week learning from the masters that we have working for our company. And it teaches them not only how to teach digitally, so it prepares them for having success now, but it also teaches them how to teach in a salon, in a store, how to be on stage, how to stand like a rock star on stage, how to project, where you should be standing, your clients should be uncomfortable, how to project, how to answer questions by repeating the questions so everyone else can hear, everything they need to know to be rock stars and have more extraordinary careers. And then when they graduate, they don't just get a certificate. They are now part of a community of rock stars, and they all get to know each other. They become friends. Their text group continues on after we're done, and they're lifting each other up. And when they graduate, they have to teach a digital education on our platform in front of our 1 million followers. In these rockstar camps, they're practicing giving speeches just like they were be on American Idol. And you'd have these judges that are basically saying, here's what you can do better. Here's what you're doing really good. And they practice. And it requires a lot of us, but it requires a ton of them. These are people who are hungry and they want to be part of it. So we're proud that we've graduated rock stars at this point. I believe we've graduated about 16 rock stars, and 12 of the 16 are artists of color. And so it's actually really exciting. Just when you think you've got everything figured out, all of a sudden new challenges arise. And that's the entrepreneur's call. And you come out and you find ways to solve the problem. So Rockstar Camp's the solution to that problem. I look forward to having more people in Rockstar Camp. And I'm hopeful that when vaccine comes out and we could all return to a normal, to conduct my own Rockstar Camps in person and have people like yourself come and teach a session at this Rockstar Camp and I'll tell you what, it's the most rewarding thing right now. If you were to ask Doug Theo and Hair by KCO, I'll use their Instagram name so everybody knows who they are,
sure,
who are the people who are running Rockstar Camp, and Corey Hoffman Hair. If what's the most gratifying moments of your career, and these people have gone across the world with me on stages in nightclubs and big arenas, they would say teaching Rockstar Camp is the best thing they've ever done.
That's incredible. How does somebody find out about this? Is this invite only, or is it a membership, or how does it work?
Unfortunately, at the moment, it's invite only. I can visualize doing this on a bigger scale where we're able to, because there's enough of us out there, people like you and I, who can make a real difference in people's careers. And right now, aren't we not living in the golden age of hair? Right. The idea that you can be a rock star with a little bit of talent and a cell phone. I mean, and we started this conversation off by talking about this. It's like, what do they need in order to take their careers from just being a hairstylist behind the chair into something bigger or different or better? They need a little talent and a cell phone. They need people to help them learn how to do it. And that's what we provide. So right now it's invite only, but we'll see where we go from there. That's
incredible. Well, if you have any, I would love to even share some things on what's worked for me with my online business as well, because I know that it's not like you're not used to that or going in that direction, but I've had a lot of success with that. So I'd be happy to share what I've learned as well with that.
If I were to make a list of people in the industry that I know who would be tailor-made for this, you'd be at the very top of the list.
Thank you. Well, man, I've just had such a great time chatting with you today, and I could talk to you a lot longer. One question I like to ask a lot of my guests is, you've had so much success in your life, aside from anything that didn't go quite as planned, but I mean, you've just one success after another on your resume or, whatever somebody might Google search you and find you on. Do you consider yourself successful?
That's a really good question. And yeah, I do. And it feels really good to say that. And because for so many years I didn't. And I think I've learned to feel that way, because you think that the moment you feel success is the moment you walk out of the office and walk down the street and realize you just sold your company to L'Oreal. That should be the moment. In the movies, that's the moment.
Right.
But it wasn't for me. It took a little bit longer to realize that I'm a success, and it does feel great to feel that way.
Well, great. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Where can people find you, listen to you? You have a podcast, right? You've got Zero Gravity Genius. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on this. This has been wonderful. You are a gifted interviewer, and you've made my job very easy. So thank you for that. People could find me on Instagram at David Thurston Official. They could also find my website at David Thurston Official, and there you'll see my podcast, which got off to a false start. I aspire to bring it back when COVID's over, because I want to interview people in person in their environment. That was kind of one of the hallmarks of what I wanted to try to do, and we just can't do that right now, so we'll get back to that. But those are really the best places to find me. Well, thank you so much. I wish you health, safety, and continued success, and thanks for riotizing our fans.
I wish you all the best. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye.
You got it. Thanks. I love hearing from you. And by the way, have you subscribed to the podcast yet? Oh my gosh, if you haven't, please do so right now, because there's so much cool stuff ahead. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because it would be much cooler if you did. Plus, I don't want you to miss any of the new episodes I'm dropping weekly. Last thing, if you haven't checked out RyanWhedon.com yet, there are some great freebies on there that I want to give you. So go ahead and check it out, RyanWhedon.com. Thank you so much for listening. You are awesome.